Good morning. Today, on day 306 of our 365 days of Bible study, we are still looking at the Jesus story from St. Mark's Gospel, and now we come to the final few verses. This is Mark chapter 16, verses 1 to 8, and it's all we have left of Mark's Easter story. I'll turn you around so you can see the text. And once the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and James's mother Mary and Salome bought aromatics so that when they came they could anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, that is Sunday, they came to the tomb at sunrise. And they were saying to one another, "Who will roll the stone away from the entrance to the tomb for us?" And as they looked up, they saw that the stone had been rolled away because it was huge. And having gone into the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right, dressed in a white robe. And they were more than amazed. But he spoke to them. "Don't be so shocked. You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, the crucified one. He has got up, he is not here. You can see the place where they interred him. But go and say to his disciples and to Peter that he is going before you into Galilee. You will see him there, as he said to you." And they got out fast and fled from the tomb. And they were possessed with quivering and incredulity. They didn't speak to anyone. They were frightened because... And that is where it ends. Now, the women who witnessed the crucifixion are mentioned by Mark. His witnesses are Mary Magdalene, Mary, James's mother, and Salome. They had been with the disciples and Jesus since his time in Galilee, supporting him, and they were still with him when they all came to Jerusalem. Joseph of Arimathea, a Jewish council member who was also a supporter of Jesus, asked permission from the Roman governor to take possession of Jesus' now dead body. Pilate was surprised that Jesus was already dead, but once assured that it was so, he allowed Joseph to do what he had requested. Joseph personally took the body from the cross and wrapped it in the shroud he had bought for the purpose and placed the dead body in his own tomb. The women saw where the tomb was and knew a stone had been rolled across its entrance. So now the Gospel ends with the brief scene on the Sunday morning. Many people have thought down the ages that Mark's real ending has been lost, since the most reliable ancient manuscripts appear to end in the middle of a sentence. And other manuscripts contain several different attempts at a repair. It is such a familiar story and such an unusual occurrence that it should come as no surprise that those who experienced it described it in different ways and did not all remember everything that happened. One feature of all four Gospel accounts goes a long way towards authenticating the story as a whole. It is the prominence of the women in it as witnesses. Now, the early church would not have made that up. It helps that we see in what remains of Mark's surviving account such features as the naturalness of their conversation as they approached the tomb and their subsequent reluctance to speak for fear of what might follow. The messenger they met in the tomb is described here in Mark as a neaniskos, a youth, whom the other Gospels clarify to be one or more angels. His message is clear. He has got up, he has risen, he is not among the dead, not here among the dead. And they are sent to the disciples, and particularly to Peter, who would have been in need of particular reassurance. From here, the story continues with the risen Christ explicitly with the disciples and in the church, continuing his work in larger and larger parts of the world. From there, he never went away. We are his body, his hands, his feet, his voice. Two traditions have come down to us concerning the disciples' experiences of the risen Christ. There are those appearances which took place in Jerusalem area, which might well be the result of the disciples' almost immediate realization that the cross was not the disaster it seemed, and that they needed to reappraise all that they thought about Jesus. And then there is the other tradition of the appearances from Lakeside Galilee, which emphasize the new drive outwards from the center towards the wider world. No longer was Jesus limited to the reach of his human body. Now, in the church and above it, he was released out into the wider world. Well, now that brings us to the end of St. Mark. In the next few days, we will look at the contribution that the mysterious missing document, Q, made to the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. Mark does not have access to this collection of sayings, and none of them appear there. And Matthew and Luke appear to have slightly different editions of it. We'll continue tomorrow by beginning to look at the contents of this lost book as it has been preserved by Matthew and Luke, and we're glad that they have passed these sayings on to us. See you tomorrow.